the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
From the shadows at the edge of understanding to the things waiting just beyond the veil. This is the Shadow Frequency. I'm Matt Wilson.
And I'm Juniper Ravenwood, once again standing in front of the file cabinet, which I trust less every single night. All right, let's see what nightmare inventory we've got tonight.
That cabinet has never once produced anything comforting.
No, and it seems weirdly proud of that. Okay, first item up, a pair of eyeglasses that let you see someone standing behind you in reflections.
Oh, absolutely not.
The worst part is, there's nobody behind me until I look in the lens.
Put those back before we find out whether it follows people home.
Gladly. And now we have a hospital visitor badge dated 40 years in the future.
That is not good.
No, because either somebody hasn't arrived yet, or somebody visited a place they really weren't supposed to be.
And somehow I think neither option ends well.
Nothing from this cabinet ever does. Let's see. Wait, here it is, tonight's folder. Yep.
All right, episode 299, Jill Wheeler and the Orange-Haired Extraterrestrial.
A Nebraska mother, a massive dome facility, strange cubicles, silent people, missing time, illness, high strangeness, and one towering being with orange hair who seemed to command everything around her.
What begins as one impossible encounter grows into something darker. A trail of missing memories, unexplained phenomena, and questions that refuse to stay buried.
Was Jill Wheeler pulled into a hidden reality most people never see? Or did she somehow survive contact with something that had been watching her far longer than she knew?
Tonight, we step into one of the strangest and most unsettling close encounter cases we've ever covered.
So if you're ready, keep your eyes open, trust your instincts, and maybe don't look too long into any reflection.
Episode 299, Jill Wheeler and the Orange-Haired Extraterrestrial.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson. Produced by Juniper Ravenwood. With Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
Tonight's file is the kind that gets under your skin in a really particular way. Not because it starts with lights over a field or some shape drifting across the highway at 3 a.m. No, this one drops us somewhere much worse. Inside a place that should not exist. A gigantic dome structure. Rows of cubicles. Silent human figures. A cold table. And moving through all of it, like some impossible supervisor in a nightmare factory, a towering extraterrestrial with vivid orange hair. If that sounds too strange to be real, well, that's exactly why it lingers.
Yeah, that's the part that hooks you right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you hear orange-haired extraterrestrial, your brain almost wants to laugh it off for half a second.
All right.
And then the rest of the picture settles in, and suddenly it's not funny at all.
No.
It's eerie. It's specific. It feels like somebody remembered a place they were never supposed to see.
And the deeper you go into Jill Wheeler's account, the less it sounds like one weird moment, and the more it feels like a long-running shadow over her entire life. Missing memories, strange encounters, illness, fear, and that awful possibility that the first experience was only the beginning. So go ahead, Matt. Open the file.
Juniper, thank you for digging into the file cabinet and pulling out one that is genuinely unnerving. Tonight we're talking about Jill Wheeler, or at least the woman identified publicly under that pseudonym, and the version of her story that's been circulated most widely through UFO researcher Preston Dennett. On his official site, Dennett lists a chapter in Inside UFOs called A 9-Foot-Tall Alien with Orange Hair, and the searchable descriptions tied to that case frame Jill as a Nebraska witness born in 1960, whose encounters stretched across much of her life. And that matters because this story does not begin with the dome. The public summaries say Jill's first encounter happened when she was just 5 years old, when a group of 3-foot-tall figures dressed like teddy bears entered her home and told her to follow them. That image alone is creepy enough to earn a place in the haunted file cabinet forever, because it takes something soft and childlike and twists it into something predatory. Then, according to the same source trail, the encounters did not stop. Around age 9, the Greys reportedly returned and began teaching her secret lessons. So already, before we even get to the most famous part of the case, you've got the outline of a classic long contact story. Early childhood exposure, repeated visits, memory gaps, and that strange feeling that the witness is not being chosen once, but managed over time. That is what makes the Jill Wheeler account feel less like a random sighting and more like a relationship. And I use that word carefully because it's not a comforting relationship. It feels invasive, structured, ongoing. Then comes the image most people remember. Jill reportedly found herself in an enormous interior space with a dome ceiling surrounded by hundreds of small cubicles. Searchable descriptions of the case say she was lying inside one of those cubicles on a cold steel doctor's table, dazed and disoriented, trying to understand where she was and why other human-looking figures seemed just as lost as she was. That detail is what gives the case its chill. Not just a craft, not just a flash of light, a facility, a place that suggests organization, repetition, and purpose. And then, moving through that place, came the being, a 9-foot-tall entity with orange hair. Not in the background, not barely seen, not glimpsed through fog memory for a half a second, but remembered as a commanding presence. The searchable versions of the account describe that figure as appearing suddenly while Jill was still trying to get her bearings. And from there, the whole thing takes on this awful atmosphere of hierarchy. The silent human figures, the cubicles, the table, the giant being. It does not sound random. It sounds like Jill believed she had stumbled or been taken into a system already in motion. And that's where this case gets especially cinematic in the worst possible way. Because if you can picture it, really picture it, the fear is immediate. Imagine opening your eyes not in a bedroom, not in a hospital, not in any place your mind can label and survive, but under a dome that stretches above you like a manufactured sky. Imagine looking left and right and seeing cubicle after cubicle, as if whatever was happening there had happened many times before. And then imagine realizing that the tallest thing in the room is alive, watching, and apparently in charge. The public summaries also suggest Jill's encounters continued across the years and into adulthood. One searchable retelling notes that she later became pregnant with her first child and then had another, while the broader description of the case presents her life as marked by reoccurring contact and long-term disruption. That does not prove hybrid theories or any larger agenda, of course, but it helps explain why people who follow abduction lore keep coming back to this case. To them, Jill's story is not just about a bizarre room and a bizarre being. It's about a pattern that never really let go. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of the first half of this file, the sense that Jill was never just a witness. She was part of something, maybe observed, maybe handled, maybe returned. The dome, the cubicles, the steel table, the silent humans, the orange-haired authority figure. All of it feels less like a dream and more like a glimpse behind a curtain we were never meant to pull back. And once that image gets into your head, it is really hard to shake.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like a sighting. It feels like a workplace from somewhere beyond us.
Exactly. And in the second half, we're going to talk about why that matters, the aftermath, the larger pattern, and the one rational explanation people always bring to cases like this. Juniper, take us into the break.
So far tonight, we've gone from childhood encounters to a cold steel table under a giant dome, and I'm guessing some of you are already sitting there thinking, okay, what exactly was that place? And maybe even worse, if Jill really saw it, how many other people have? We've still got the aftermath ahead, and that may be the previous part. Over to Chris.
All right, Juniper. Quick shout out to all our listeners in the shadows. If you're loving the show, the best thing you can do for us is hit like, subscribe, or follow on whatever platform you're listening on. You can find The Shadow Frequency on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Rumble, and all major podcast apps. Our headquarters is shadowfrequencypodcast.com. Every episode lives there, along with our Shadow blog, exclusive merch, and a voicemail button where you can tell us where you're listening from. We might play your message on a future episode. Back to the darkness. Juniper.
All right, time to fire up the Spectral Cosmic Message Materializer. Let's flip the switches. Let's give the static a little shake, rattle, and ghostly gears and see what slips out of the ether. Ah, there we go. A curious little message just floated loose from the cosmic machinery.
From the void.
Let's peel it open and find out what our listeners sent in from the other side of the inbox. This one says, hey guys, this is Benjamin from Nebraska. I listen on iHeartRadio while I'm out working and checking electric meters for the power company. I really enjoy the blog and some of my favorite episodes are the conspiracy and UFO ones. Just wanted to say I love what you guys are doing and keep up the great work. Benjamin from Nebraska. Well, Benjamin from Nebraska, first off, thank you. I love that you're out there checking electric meters with the show in your ears because that already sounds like the start of a paranormal story. And I'm really glad you enjoyed the blog too. Also, conspiracy episodes and UFO episodes, excellent taste. That is a very strong haunted gumbo platter right there. And thanks for listening on iHeartRadio, Benjamin. We always love hearing where people listen, what they're doing, and which episodes stick with them. So keep those messages coming to shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. And you can send our stories and comments and your favorite episodes or just a note from wherever you happen to be listening in the dark. All right, Matt, back over to you for the second half.
You are tuned to the Shadow Frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. The darkness continues.
Thanks, Juniper. And Benjamin, thank you for listening. All right, let's get back into Jill Wheeler, because this is where the case stops being just a surreal image and starts becoming something heavier. The public trail on this one is still thin. The main version I found remains Dennett's book chapter and the connected video description, plus reposted summaries. But even within that limited trail, the shape of the story is clear. Childhood encounters, later onboard or inside facility experiences, and a life that the retellings describe as shadowed by recurring contact. And that's important because the dome scene is memorable, sure, but the aftermath is what gives it weight. Anybody can tell one strange story and leave it sitting there like a weird object on a shelf. Cases that endure are usually the ones where the witnesses say the experience kept reaching back into their life. Jill's account is presented that way, not as one impossible afternoon, but as something that kept resurfacing through memory, fear, and the awful sense that the phenomenon had not finished with her. That's where the orange-haired being starts to feel less like an isolated monster and more like a symbol of control. What makes this case so eerie to me is the implied system. The cubicles are almost worse than the alien. A giant being is terrifying, sure, but cubicles? That suggests process, procedure, repetition. It suggests Jill did not land in some random hallucinated landscape full of chaotic dream logic. She remembered compartments, placement, order. Human-looking figures who seem to belong there, or at least were trapped in the same machinery she was. That's why people who study encounter reports tend to lock onto the environment just as hard as the being itself. The room tells its own story. Now, when you pull back and place this inside the larger UFO contact world, you start seeing why the case has stuck around. Britannica notes that so-called contact events, including abductions, are often linked to UFO belief, and Hynek's close encounter framework helped give that whole conversation a vocabulary. Then its own framing for inside UFOs pushes even farther, arguing that close contact reports can involve onboard settings, human-looking entities, medical-style environments, warnings, and sometimes hybridization themes. Jill's reported dome encounter, the steel table, the silent figures, and the long-running nature of the case all fit neatly into that broader lore. Now, I said I'd give you one skeptical note in this half, and here it is. A rational explanation people often raise in alien abduction cases is sleep paralysis or related waking dream states, because those episodes can involve feeling a presence, seeing a figure, chest pressure, terror, and vivid hallucinations. There is also research showing that memory is not a perfect recording device and can be altered, reshaped, or recovered in ways that complicate certainty. So yeah, that possibility has to be on the table when stories like this are discussed. But even with that said, Jill Wheeler's case does not linger because it is easy. It lingers because it is specific. Too specific, maybe, to just glide past. The teddy bear figures in childhood, the gray beings returning with secret lessons, the dome, the cubicles, the steel table, the 9-foot-tall figure with orange hair. Those are not the broad brushstrokes of a generic ghost story. They are the strange, oddly textured details that makes people lean in and ask, why this? Why that? Why would a mind invent something so bizarrely procedural? And that's the part I keep coming back to. If Jill fabricated it, she fabricated something unforgettable. If she dreamed it, she dreamed an architecture of control. And if she remembered something real, something external, something hidden, something non-human, then the implications are a whole lot darker than a light in the sky over Nebraska. Then we are talking about infrastructure. We're talking about a place, a hidden environment where people are brought, examined, organized, maybe even processed. I also think that's why the orange-haired being matters so much. In a lot of encounter stories, the entities blur together after a while, gray faces, black eyes, clinical motions. Here, the authority figure pops out of the fog like a nightmare you could sketch from memory decades later. That detail anchors the whole case. It gives the story a face, or at least a presence, and that presence feels supervisory, not curious, not kind, in charge. So, where does that leave us? Honestly, right where the best unsettling cases leave us, with a witness who says she saw too much, a public record that never quite catches up to the experience, and an image so strange it refuses to die. Somewhere under that dome, in Jill's memory, there are cubicles stretching into the distance and a giant orange-haired entity moving among them like it owns the place. And whether that was an alien facility, a shattered memory, a liminal nightmare, or something even stranger, it is one of those cases that makes you feel like reality has thin spots in it. Because if Jill Wheeler really did glimpse a hidden place behind the world we think we know, then the question is not whether it was frightening. The question is how many others have been there too.
Yeah, and that's not exactly a comforting thought before bed.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
But that's the file tonight, unresolved, deeply weird, and still staring back at us from somewhere under that dome. Juniper, close us out.
The heck was that? That's tonight's case. Joe Wheeler, the dome facility, the silent cubicles, and the towering orange-haired extraterrestrial that makes this one feel less like a sighting and more like a terrible glimpse behind a curtain. Whether you hear it as a close encounter, a lifelong haunting, or a mystery with no clean answer, it's definitely one that stays with you. Thanks for joining us tonight on The Shadow Frequency, and as always, we'd love to hear from you. Send your stories, your comments, favorite episodes, or strange experiences to shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. And you can find our website at shadowfrequencypodcast.com. And be sure to check out the show on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Rumble. We'll be back soon with another strange chase from the shadows. Matt, you want to say goodnight?
Stay curious, stay careful, and keep a light on.
Good night, Shadow Seekers.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your